Terrible news. Terrible news. I was just out in the garage, just lifting a few weights, just trying to throw some weights around. That's just what you do on Fridays. It's just what you do. And I may have re-injured the tendon right here. Oh, man. And I know exactly how I did it, too. It wasn't through lifting. It was yesterday. I was hitting some dingers over the fence at the softball field. With the baseball, I wasn't playing softball. I mean, what am I, gay? I mean, I'm not playing softball. But I was trying a little too hard to hit some home runs, and I know I tweaked it there. But we'll see. It feels okay now, but I was lifting and I could feel it. So let's get started. All right. Yeah, we haven't done a Mets update in a while, so that's how we're going to start today. It's going to be a Mets update, and I don't know if you've been paying attention, but the New York Mets are, we're only 10% of the way through the season, but we're in first place in the NL East, that's for sure. And we're not playing, and this is the thing that's amazing about this, we're not even playing all that great, but we're winning. And when you have a team that can win even when they're not playing all that great, that's a very good sign, in my opinion. I mean, listen, I'm no expert, but that's a very good sign. And it's just been great to see. And we've been winning primarily on the strength of our pitching, which if you listen to the experts, and I often do, the experts were like, well, the Mets, they got no pitching. They need to go out and sign a pitcher and all this kind of stuff. And, it's all noise. That's all noise because this is the thing. Everyone thinks they know how to get the best pitchers. You make the big contract for the big splash for the big starter. And I know that's fugazi. You can't do it that way anymore. It's not how it works anymore. Every pitcher these days, it's only a matter of time before their arm explodes. And so you can't do the thing where you give the big money to the big pitcher because, yeah, sure, he'll be great when he's pitching. But here's the thing. Chances are he's not going to be pitching the entire season. So that's number one. Number one is that the pitchers these days, their arms explode at a moment's notice. You never know. Secondly, if you think about it, and this is if you really think about it, right? You gotta go into the math a little bit here, right? You got a pitcher, a great pitcher. You give him millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. You blow all your cash on one pitcher. And here's the problem. That pitcher only pitches once every 5 games. Some of these guys are once every 6 games. The Japanese guys, I don't know what they're doing over in Japan. But, the guy can only pitch 1 out of every 6 games. I don't know what they're doing over there. But, so they're only pitching 1 out of every 6 games. Okay, that's great. So you get a really good start at that time, but then you got to fill in the rest of the starts. There's a lot of innings in between there. But then not only that, but if you look at the difference between like an excellent pitcher and then a pretty good pitcher, the difference really isn't that much when it comes to runs. And so, not only is he only pitching 1 out of every 5 games, but in that 5th game, the difference between him and some other guy, it's really not that big a deal, right? And here's the other factor here. You can't win by pitching because pitchers don't score any runs, so you need to score runs too. And so this is what the classic Mets all the time. We'd have Jacob deGrom on the mound, a complete phenom. He was unbelievable, but again, his arm explodes. That's just how it is. But he would lose a lot. Why did he lose a lot? Because the Mets didn't hit when he pitched. So you got the greatest pitcher in the world on the mound, but if you don't hit, you don't win. And so here's the thing, guys. You gotta look at it differently. And the guy on the screen right now, David Stern, look at him. He's so smug. He knows he's smarter than everybody else. He went into this season, he's like, look, I've already got my plan. I know how to do it. I know what to do. Here's what you do, right? You collect a bunch of pretty good pitchers. Just a bunch of them. Just collect them because you're going to need them because, pitchers' arms explode. We all know that. So you get like 6, 7, 8 guys, and they're all pretty good. They're not elite, but they're pretty good. And some of them, they're not going to work out, and, whatever. That's fine because you got 7 or 8 of them. Some of them are going to be hidden gems, and you're going to find a guy, and you're going to be able to get a lot out of him, and he's going to pitch better than pretty good. He'll pitch like almost elite. But you got him on the cheap because nobody thought we're not going to sign him to big money. So you got him for decent money. And so you got these 8 guys. They're all competing with each other to get a spot on the starting rotation. And then you've got this collection. And so whoever doesn't work out, you get rid of them. Whoever does work out, you put them in the rotation, and there you go. And so I knew, look, he signed Montas, he signed Canning, he signed, we got Clay Holmes, and everyone's laughing at us. And he goes, we're signing Max Fried, and you're over here signing Clay Holmes. Everyone's laughing, right? But no one's laughing now, I'll tell you that. Look at this stat. Look, 10% of the season, I get it, right? But it doesn't matter because we've got the strategy. We've got a collection of these guys. So if somebody falls off, it doesn't matter because there's another guy we can just slide right in there. Look at this. 19 games, first 19 games this season. Overall team ERA, we are number 1 with a bunch of guys that everyone's like, the Mets got no pitching. Starters ERA, number 1 in the entire league. We're not just talking National League here. This is the entire league. And then we've got our relief pitching, number 3 in the league. So this is like top tier pitching. And listen, I don't believe that we're going to be number 1 for the whole season, but I think we're going to be pretty good for the entire season. And so we're winning games because nobody can score against us. Look at the runs scored in the league. I'm pretty sure we have the least runs scored in the entire league, or runs against, rather, in the entire league. That's pretty good. You can win a lot of games if you're scoring an average amount of runs and you've got the least amount of runs scored against you. I mean, you're going to win some games. So things are going pretty well. And this is the thing, and everyone's making fun of Juan Soto. He's not producing all that well. I mean, he's still getting on base. He's still scoring runs. He's still doing his thing. He's hit 3 home runs. It's nothing special. But man, imagine what would be happening if he does start producing, which he most likely will because players are who they are typically. So man, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it, man. And all it required was thinking about this a little bit differently. And I got to give all the credit in the world to my brother because he thought about this pitching strategy where you collect. He was less nice than me. He says you collect a bunch of Jags, and then you figure out which Jags can actually pitch, and then the other ones that can't, you get rid of them. The ones that can, you got a great staff. I like it. I think it's good. Look at the Yankees. They won the pitching offseason, and their pitching is just. Pretty bad. Let's just face it. The Yankees pitching is pretty bad, except for Max Fried, which, again, you can't trust him because these pitchers' arms, they're made of glass. In any case. But, yeah, let's talk about something else, though. Because most of you guys, you don't care about baseball. I get it. Even Andrew Isker was making fun of me for caring too much about baseball the other day. It's okay. It's okay. But I wanted to talk about the tariffs. Right? The tariffs and all the financial turmoil that we're in, right? And a lot of my friends are all, frustrated and concerned and nervous. There's a lot of fear out there, that's for sure. And this is the first financial turmoil, let's just call it, that I am not feeling that way at all. And I think I learned my lessons in the great financial crisis, 2008, and also the COVID stuff, everything that happened with COVID, whatever happened there. And so here's the thing, guys, you got to remember that whenever there's a situation that hurts the market, that hurts certain industries, you got to remember that there's always some segment of the economy that's going to benefit, right? And so you gotta kind of cut out the noise, right? You gotta cut out the noise, and what I mean by that is there's an incentive for media to get you all panicked, right? To get you all concerned, to make you think certain things just by feeling, just by instinct, without really examining the data, right? And so this tariff thing is a perfect example, right? It doesn't even matter if you agree with the tariffs or not. I'll tell you what I think about the tariffs, but again, I'm telling you, look at me. This doesn't matter what I think, right? But what matters is what's actually happening. What's actually happening. So people will talk and talk and talk and talk, and then but they're actually doing things as well. And sometimes the things that they're doing are congruent with what they're saying, and sometimes the things that they're doing isn't congruent with what they're saying. So you got to look at what they're doing as opposed to just the talking. So the tariffs, here's the thing with the tariffs. Obviously Trump, the reason why he's doing this tariff is because he thinks that he wants to solve the trade deficit, right? He wants people to start making things in America. He wants to even out the trade deficit. And that's a good goal in my opinion. But again, remember, my opinion doesn't matter, but it's a good goal, right? He's telling you what his goal is. Now, that's a good goal. I fully support it. Now, the tariffs, in my opinion, again, this doesn't matter. But in my opinion, the tariffs aren't going to do that, right? And if it is capable of doing that, it's going to take a long time. There's a lot of pain between here and then, right? Because you can't just, put some tariffs on and all of a sudden you've got manufacturing facilities here in the United States that are ready to go. It doesn't work that way, right? You need time, you need massive investment, lots of capital. Need to have companies with the will to do it. I think we have some of that, but we also have to have more capital. We have to have a lot more saving going on than spending. And so that's going to take time, right? So even if I'm wrong and the tariffs do work, it's going to be a lot of pain in the meantime, right? And so this is the thing. So I don't think they're going to work, but they may work if there's other things that happen. But the tariffs alone, I don't think will work. None of that matters, though. None of that matters because Donald Trump is telegraphing to you what his goals are, what he's trying to do, right? And then he's going out and doing things to kind of achieve those goals. And people are getting the signal. People are understanding what. But in the meantime, the tariffs are going to increase prices for us. And that's just a fact. You just have to accept it. You might think it's worth it. I personally, think that there is an aspect of it that's worth it. You know what I mean? I'm not up in arms about it. I mean, I don't like paying, higher prices. But at the same time, if the goal is reached, it's definitely worth it, right? But it doesn't matter if you think it's worth it or not. That is what's happening, right? And so we've already got some companies, like Mercedes was saying this. They're not going to sell certain cars in America anymore because it's not financially feasible to do it. Every car is going to be more expensive. And so you got to think to yourself, you got to think, how do I set myself up to not only survive all this economic turmoil, but also to thrive, right? I want to thrive ideally. And so you've got to figure out, given what you're being told by Donald Trump, and you got to remember too, a lot of media is trying to get you to think that he's completely nuts, right? They want you to think that he's just flying off the handle. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not got no plan. He's just doing this, doing that, whatever comes to mind. And there's a lot of effort that's being put to getting you to think he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just flying off the seat. He's got no plan, right? That's what they're saying. But you got to think to yourself, okay, he's telling me what he wants to do. This is a successful person. What if he's not just completely nuts, right? And he's literally telling me what he wants to do. So you got to think to yourself, okay, he's saying he's going to do these tariffs. He's doing some of them, and some of them he's pulled back, but he's doing the tariffs, right? So what does that mean for me? And well, it means that certain things are going to be more expensive. And so when you look at your assets, right, and what you're investing in and what you're doing with your money, maybe you don't even have enough money to have big investments, right? But you have some money, right? You've got to think, what should I do with my money, knowing that things that I need are going to be more expensive in the coming year, the coming few years, whatever the case may be. And you got to do those things, right? I'm not going to give you financial advice, but here's an example that I heard just recently, and it perfectly illustrates what I'm talking about, right? So I own two Toyotas. I own two relatively new Toyotas, so I'm not going to have to deal with this anytime soon. But when I do have to deal with this, I'm the kind of guy that, I don't do what normal people do. I mean, what do normal people do when they, middle-class people, when their car is getting pretty old, starts to have some issues and stuff like that? Well, but normal people, what they used to do was they'd go to the dealership, they'd trade it in and get a new car, right? I'm not that kind of guy. That's not the kind of guy I am. I'm going to drive my cars into the ground, right? But when the new Toyota is double the price of what it used to be, what are those same people more likely to do? Well, they're more likely to fix their cars, right? They're more likely to, take it to the shop or fix it themselves instead of trading it in to buy a car that's twice the price of what they're expecting. And so there's opportunity there, right? Because, yeah, car sales are probably going to go down, so that's going to suffer. But people that can fix cars and companies that make, parts to fix cars, there's opportunity there. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I don't give financial advice, but these are the things you can think through. And there's lots of opportunities like that. The car thing is not the only one. There's tons of them out there, right? There's tons of them. And so you've got to remember that people survive this kind of stuff. Economic chaos, most people survive it, right? And there are people that thrive during this kind of stuff, and you want to be one of those people. And so what that requires is that you cut out the noise. If you're spending too much of your mental energy and too much of your time thinking about whether you agree with Trump on the tariffs or not, you're not doing it the right way, because it ultimately barely matters if you agree with Trump or not, or if you think he's an idiot, or you love him, or you think his ideas are stupid, or you think they're smart. All of that stuff, like, it matters some, but not really that much. That's out of your pay grade, right? You're not in charge of that. You really have very barely any input on that, unless, certain people do, but most people who watch my channel don't. So my suggestion is to stop spending time thinking about that and instead start spending time looking at what is happening. He's doing the tariffs. You know what I mean? He's going to war financially with China. That is happening. And that's going to have all kinds of consequences. And you want to set yourself up to benefit from those consequences, or at least not get hurt as much from those consequences. And I remember during the great financial crisis, I was totally ill-prepared, right? I was living in New York. You've heard the story. I was living in New York. I was making a good income, but I was spending 3 steps ahead. And I remember after the great financial crisis, my income took a huge hit, but I was still spending until I came really to the end of myself. It was financial ruin, right? And I was totally ill-prepared. I had barely any assets. I had really nothing to my name. In fact, I had to sell assets so that I could get out of debt, because I put myself in a lot of debt, and that took time. I got out of debt little by little. And so I survived the great financial crisis by the skin of my teeth, but I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of lessons because Obama was out there doing all this stuff, saying all this stuff, and I disagreed with all of it. I disagreed with all of his solutions to the great financial crisis. It was a disaster, train wreck. But what I learned was it doesn't matter if I disagree with it. What matters is what do I do with my money, with my stuff, in light of what Obama's going to do, whether I agree with it or not, right? And so I learned, and I actually made some moves with some money. I acquired certain assets that did pretty well during that time. And then by the time we got to the COVID crisis, I still didn't have a ton of assets because, again, like I said, I went into serious debt. I was completely financially ruined by the great financial crisis. But I had some. And I made some moves, and I during that, I did have some anxiety during the COVID crisis, but I survived it, and not only did I survive it, but I did pretty well. And I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I did pretty well during the COVID situation. And now I'm at the point now where I'm facing another financial, chaotic turmoil situation, right? But I've made the investments that I believe will help me to survive what's probably going to happen. Trump is going to put these tariffs in place. In fact, some of them are already there. Trump is probably going to do more tariffs, right? He's kind of telegraphing that. He says that he's doing it, so I just believe him, right? I mean, whether I agree with it or not, it's kind of irrelevant. He's just kind of doing things, right? He also is saying he's going to, most likely fire Powell, right? I've been hearing a lot about that. I know he's not happy with Powell. He wants rates to be cut, interest rates to be cut. And listen, whether I think that's a good idea or not doesn't really matter. I could tell you what I think about that, but it doesn't matter. You shouldn't care what I think about that. You should just know what's happening, what he's doing, what he's going to do, right? I think Trump's going to get his way on that. Either Powell's going to cut rates or he's going to find someone else that'll do it. That's what I think, because Trump certainly, whether you think he's stupid or smart, he's the guy that can get things done, right? And so these things, it doesn't matter if I agree with it or not, or if I love Trump or hate Trump, or if I think he's a racist, or if I think he's a liberal. None of this matters. What matters is looking at the data, figuring out what's happening, what's going to happen, and figuring out what to do with your assets that will survive that at the very least, but ideally thrive during that period. And I feel like I'm in look, I mean, I'm not independently wealthy, right? But I have a lot more assets than I used to have. That's a fact, right? And I think I feel very confident. Of course, my confidence comes from the Lord, right? But I feel very comfortable with my asset mix and all of the things that I've done with the things that the good Lord has decided to bless me with. This is a crucial time for you if you're not prepared, right? Just to remember, number one, you will survive this. People survive this kind of stuff all the time. And number two, focus on the things that are real, the actual, the data, the actual actions that are happening, as opposed to how you feel about them. How you feel about what Trump is doing is basically irrelevant to what you do with the money that you have, the assets that you have. So if you find yourself getting emotional and getting all wrapped up into some of this stuff, take a step back, because that is useless to you. In fact, it's worse than useless, because when you're scared, when you're full of anxiety, when you're worried about all kinds of stuff, that robs you of your logic. It robs you of your reason. You can be made to do all kinds of things when that kind of fear and anxiety is running rampant. And so I would argue you want to cut out a lot of the financial media. I mean, there's certain things that I watch, but and that I get a lot of value out of. But I always cut it off when they get too doomsday, because I have a tendency. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying personally, I have a tendency to get wrapped up in the doomsday stuff, right? And you might think that's weird because I don't black pill, right? Well, the reason I don't black pill is because I do black pill, but the problem is I cut it off. I've got enough discipline to not continue to indulge in the black pilling, right? When something gets too black pilling, I cut it off. I just turn it off completely. So anyway, you might find this episode useless because I didn't tell you what to do with your money. And some of you probably can assume what I do with my money. But I do think that every person needs to really just try as much as they can to cut out a lot of the financial noise. The media wants you all angry and scared and confused. But you do need some data, so you need to find some way to get that information without the requisite emotional manipulation that so often comes with it, and then make some moves, because this is not the time to just sit on your hands, right? This is not the time to do nothing, right? This is not the time to go into tremendous debt because you're too stupid to realize that there's financial turmoil, and look, your income's probably going to take a hit, and look, it's probably not worth it to go spend all your money on drugs and alcohol like I was. I mean, I was pretty stupid back then. Simple as that. This is not the time for that. This is not the time for that. This is the time for thoughtful action. This is the time for coordinating with your friends and commiserating with your friends on moves that you can make to not only survive, but to thrive. And of course, God will help you with this stuff, man. Pray to the Lord to help you with your steps, with your decisions, with your finances and all of this stuff. Look, I know that there's so much out there that's like, well, God doesn't care if you're rich or not, and it almost makes like thinking about finances too much almost like it's like dirty. It's like idolatry. It's not, obviously. In any case, hope you found this video helpful. Have a great weekend. Good Lord's Day. God bless.